Hello everybody and welcome back to the Storm Poker Challenge at mybet.com. My name is Dylan, and in the second video of the Riders of the Storm series, we'd like to provide you guys with a theoretical background to the Six Max game as such, which will include then typical ranges per position, bet types, moves, pot manipulation, as well as a few key stats for both the Six Max and Full Ring games.
Riders on the storm. Riders on the storm. Into this house we're born. Into this world we're thrown.
So as you see here, the title of the second video is that the swell's building, and we're going to paddle out together. For that, I'm going to provide you guys with, again, a theoretical background to Six Max play. Quite generalized, but I think we'll cover most of the primary points to ensure that you guys are on a very good path moving into the actual sessions, that you'll understand exactly what I'm doing. You'll understand a lot of the terms, the reasons why I'm doing certain things, making certain bets. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into that, and if we were just to jump right into the session as such, the live or real-time Storm table cash games, then it would again be kind of like dropping you guys from a helicopter into a really serious break and just saying good luck to you. And we don't want to do that. You know, we want to provide you guys with a solid foundation, get you also up to speed, so to say, on the tables themselves, right? That you have also all of your settings set up correctly, that all the technical aspects have been taken care of, and that you also have a good understanding of Six Max play as such, at least theoretically. And then we'll move forward here with practical examples in both this and all future videos. Now this will be the last theoretical video, so from here on out it's just going to be action, and this is maybe a bit too much for a lot of players out there, but I myself fully believe that it's necessary for anybody who wants to become an advanced or an expert player within the shortest amount of time. So before we start, the most important thing is probably that you understand what the positions are, how people refer to them in general, and it's also important that you also understand what pre-flop bet types are. And I've chosen then a hand from the Hold'em Manager Replayer that will also illustrate exactly what variance is, for those of you who still don't quite believe what I was hinting at in the first video concerning bankroll management and why that's so crucial. So this is the Hold'em Manager Replayer, and as we'll be using that quite a bit in the future after the real-time session recordings, I want to cover a few of the key points. As you guys see here, we're winner in a week. We wake up with kings in the big blind. We're playing an NL20 game. That means the small blind is 10 cents, the big blind is 20 cents. And they have here Zoom, no limit. That's the table, that's the date we played. And as you see here, the total pot is always illustrated in the top left corner, and then the pot odds are for the next guy to make a move. So this guy, whenever he is under the gun, he's always going to have 1.5 to 1 odds. And if he were to go all in for that big blind call, he would need 40% equity to break even in the long run. That's what that shows you up here. Keep your eye on this corner concerning the pot odds, break even equity needed to make such calls as we move forward. So here's the button. You see this D here, that's the dealer button. Alright. Small blind is of course right here, big blind is right here, and then the player under the gun is in so-called early position. I'll refer to that as EP. And when you're making notes also in your post-session analysis, you're going to be writing not only what they played, but how they played it and from which position. That's why this is so crucial. It's also very important for when you're playing with live stats and you're looking at total ranges. You don't want to confuse their total pre-flop raise range from early position with their total pre-flop raise range open from the button. It's going to be markedly different for most players. So what we have here is position, that is small blind, big blind, early position, under the gun, middle position, and that's under the gun +1. You'll hear that referred to as UTG +1. You'll also hear that referred to as the hijack position, so-called hijack. So that's middle position is the hijack. Then over here we have the so-called cutoff, and that's abbreviated CO. All right, and that's UTG +1 +2, right? UTG +2. The next position is then the button itself, the dealer button, and that's abbreviated BU in most cases, and that is always, as you guys see here, UTG +3. So then we have again, the small blind, the big blind. So again, as a recap, small blind, big blind, under the gun or early position, middle position or the hijack, the cutoff, and again the button. That is very generally how most people refer to these positions. It's very important if you're also watching other coaching videos and you hear the coaches refer to an open raise from middle position in a 6-max environment. They're speaking about the hijack right here. So basically one after the under the gun player. And with that, I think we can move forward. And again, this is this is also an example of why you should always adhere to bankroll management. So we pick up kings, right? The second best hand in Texas Hold'em in the big blind. And action continues. The first player folds, early position folds, under the gun, middle position folds, so the hijack folds, and now it's on the cutoff here for my boy key, and he or she makes a min raise. Okay, so this is considered a min raise because it's only 1 times the big blind here as a raise, so 2 times total. So he raises it 240, and that's a min raise because it's just essentially twice the big blind. This is, in poker terms, considered a 2-bet, even though it is a min raise. It's a 2-bet, and the reason for that is as follows. Theoretically, the small blind is a 0.5 bet in Texas Hold'em. The post, when you post the blind, that's the 1 bet. All right, it's a forced bring-in bet, so to say. So that is very commonly ignored, but the reason that this is now a 2-bet, not a 1-bet, is because the big blind is considered the 1-bet, and you're forced to make that bet. So again, blinds are the forced bets. That's the 1x. Here's the 2-bet. Very good. Dealer then folds the button. Small blind folds, and we're on to act. So what's the pot right now? 20, 40, 70, and that's what you see up here in the top left. So I'm getting pot odds of 3.5 to 1, and if I'm making this call to go all in, all I need is 22% equity to break even in the long run. I'm not going all in, so if I were just to make that call flat, say, then I would need 22% chance of hitting a playable or profitable flop in general. That's how you guys can see this and work with it here in the future. But of course, with kings, we don't just flat. We 3-bet. Okay, so he makes a 2-bet. We make a 3-bet. Basically, a re-raise pre-flop. Very good. And this bet right here gives my opponent 2.5 to 1 odds, and he needs 29% equity if he were to go all in right now in order to break even in the long run. So what does he decide to do? Well, he just calls it. He called my 3-bet flat. It's also going to be referred to as calling cold or flatting. Okay, that's when you make a direct call from a previous raise. So now the pot is 210, and we see the flop. 5, Jack, 8, 2 suited, and we've got our overpair of kings. Right, we're maybe a little bit worried about him. Min raise flatting with 9-10, maybe 9-10 suited. Min raise flats are very often also pocket pairs, so he could be on 5s or 8s. All these things are possible. Any kind of Jack Ace, Jack 10, who knows? All these different things are in his range theoretically, and of course overpairs and everything else, right? In this wild and wacky game. So we, for all intents and purposes, know, as I'm about to show you guys, that him flopping a set is, with the pocket pair, essentially 7.5 to 1 against, right? Flopping a set or better. And we think we're still good with our kings, and we make a so-called continuation bet. So we were the last pre-flop aggressor, and then we bet as a continuation of our pre-flop aggression into this flop. It's called a C-bet in a 3-bet pot. Very important, guys, that you understand the difference between just a raise pot or a re-raise pot, i.e. a 2-bet or a 3-bet pot. Here I make my C-bet after I 3-bet pre-flop, C-bet into that flop, and my opponent only calls. Good. What were his odds to make that call? Well, right at 2.3 to 1. He needs about 30% if he were going all in to break even. He flats. We see the next card. Alright, so now it's Jack, 8, 9, and the 5. The club didn't come, right? And that's a good thing for us. And what I'm going to do right now is probably going to seem a bit wild to a lot of guys, but there's a reason for it. I shove. Why do I do that? Well, the reason I shove for a full, almost 100 and, what would that be, 121 big blinds more or less in the NL20 environment. I shove here because I'm not playing with my stack. I'm playing with his stack. I'm playing with the effective stack here. So the reason I shove is if I make a normal bet, let's say just another half pot bet here or a 2/3 pot bet, right? Let's call it 350 or 4. That's going to be right at half of his stack already, and the pot is going to be more than his remaining stack in total. So he's committed if he makes that call on every river, more or less. And I don't want to see another club, right? I really don't want to see a queen or let's say a 7, for example. If he is playing the 10 queen, he's already made. But again, I'm not going to fool around with this and risk a suck out. So I go ahead and shove here. And again, I wouldn't make this bet necessarily against a big stack player because I'm probably only going to get called with better hands. Now I might make that bet with, let's say, for example, the ace jack of clubs. But yeah, that's for another video. I've played in preparation for this series right under 10,000 Storm cash game hands, and I've seen that a lot of guys are buying in for the minimum as a mid-stack strategy. Basically, the short stack strategy wouldn't be playable here, buying in for 20 big blinds and then checking out with 25, because they've upped the minimum to a minimum buy-in per table of 30 big blinds, which in 20 means $6. So you're going to be playing against effective stacks here at the Storm tables quite a bit if you are playing the big stack strategy that we're going to be playing. So again, yeah, this really illustrates that you're not playing your stack necessarily, rather the effective stack in heads-up pots. So I shove here for this reason, knowing that if I make a normal bet size that he's going to be committed on every river. I don't want to see another club, again, not another queen, not another 7, stuff like that. May already be toast, but I'm putting my money to it, and I'm either good here or not. So he then flats, and now I'm going to show his cards, and he had queens. All right, so he was slow playing his over pair of queens, ran into a better over pair, which is relatively hard luck given my entire range, but yeah, not really knocking this guy's play by any means. He did have position. It was definitely doable here with his queens. And yeah, so we go ahead and shove. He flats, and we get it in. This is another thing I want to show you guys here with the replayer, is our equity. Our equity here to the river is expressed as 86%. And you'll always see that next to the player's stack size here in the replayer. So I get this in, right? I shove with 86% win chance, i.e. 86% equity in this pot. That means 86% of everything that comes in right now is mine in the long run. Not necessarily in this hand, but in the long run. I'm an 86% favorite right now when I shove, all in on the turn. And what comes? Wow. The, single card, barring the other 2 queens, that could help him out. So this guy, he had essentially 6 outs. And two queens plus the 4 tens, and yeah, one of those 6 outs came, and now this $22, which should be mine, or at least 86% of it in the long run, is now long gone, right? So a full, actually over a full stack, right, is now lost as a marked favorite in this hand. I think perfectly played. Also, his play wasn't too bad. I think his min raises, he should raise that up in general about 3 times, maybe 4 times, and probably even 4-bet versus a 3-bet from the big blind in general. But yeah, that's again for another video. But In general, yeah, okay, small stakes play, and he was, slow playing his queens and got lucky on the river. But this is, again, guys, why you must adhere to bankroll management. If that were my entire bankroll, right, I would have just lost it as an 86% favorite, and that would have been the end of my online game. So again, guys, always adhere to bankroll management. Be aware of the position, right? Be aware of the effective stack size. And with that, I think we have a good background to get into the typical ranges and positional play that you guys should definitely be aware of as you move forward, both in this series and also in your own play, both online and live. Alright, so when we make an open raise, we're going to raise it up 3 to 4 times the big blind, as you guys see here. And if there's a limper before us, we're going to raise it up 3 to 4 times the big blind, at whatever level we're playing, plus 1 per limper. And if there is a raise before us, we're going to re-raise or 3-bet, as I just mentioned in the example hand, approximately 3 times the bet before us, as a general rule. And that's what I've coined here is 3 timing. When you're doing that, you're really close to pot size bets, and you're essentially giving your opponents 2 to 1 odds. It's a little less, but the 3 timing principle keeps it really easy for you. If you're wondering, okay, how much should I raise? What's optimal here? Well, again, just 3 times the bet before you, and any time that bet size will be half of either your or your opponent's stack, i.e. half of the effective stack, then you're looking either at a push or shove in most cases. Right? We'll cover that in a bit greater detail here in the coming slides. So underneath you guys see that we've got the general recommendations for no limit 6-max play, and these are so-called starting hands ranges. And what I've written here is definitely adjust for the storm. The reason for that is that a lot of guys playing the storm format are going to be playing a lot tighter ranges than you'll see underneath. But yeah, that's something that you have to adjust based on the player, also based on the effective stack size. Just so you have that also in the back of your mind. This is a general recommendation. This is not a concrete plan by any means. But what we have is early position, EP, middle position, cutoff, button, small and big blind, as we just had in the example hand in the replayer. And what's generally recommended is that in 6-max play you just raise up any pair. So anytime you see this plus, this means pair of 2s or better is what that means. And yeah, you can also limp, right? This is not a fixed rule. There is no fixed rule as such in poker, guys, as much as some other coaches would like to insist that there be definitive right and wrongs. That there's definitely not, especially with starting hands. So you can limp from time to time, you can raise from time to time, as long as you're changing it up and doing both. I'd say you'll probably be right 9 times in 10. Now, the one thing I wouldn't recommend necessarily is limping with aces or kings or queens, especially from early position. You may get raised up, setting somebody up for a re-raise, but once you limp and then re-raise, it pretty much gives your hand away, especially if they put you on kind of like a novice or fish poker persona, say. If they give you the novice or the fish image, then yeah, limp re-raise at the low stakes is 9 times out of 10 really, really big, and you don't want to just totally turn your cards over with that move, right? You can do it from time to time. I'm not saying it's wrong. Just saying that also when you do get called, let's say you limp re-raise, and then you get 2 guys who flat or cold call behind you. They're only going to play on, if they're good players, when they can crush queens or better. And that means you'll probably be playing for stacks after the fact and only get it in good with small pots. And when you get it in when somebody flops a set or better, then yeah, you're going to stack off. Hence the reverse implied odds of playing your aces, kings, and queens from early position weak, so to say. And again, I would just say in general, raise those up just like you raise everything else up. It'll keep you unreadable as a general principle. Good. So from early position, we're going to try and raise, again, from time to time, limp with the mid small pockets, but we're going to raise in general all pairs. We're going to raise in general all Broadway that's suited. That means 10-jack to king-ace. We're going to raise all ace-jack offsuits. We're going to raise all ace-9 suited, and we're going to raise all king-queens. And if you take that entire set of hands, it comes out to 12.8% of all Texas Hold'em hands. Now, what I've got here is a phrase from Berlin, especially. It's suited is jüdet, and it's Berlin slang, and what it means is suited is good. So, contrary to popular belief, a suited hand, as opposed to its off-suited equivalent, let's say 10 Jack, for example. So the same rank, 10 and Jack, one is suited, one is off-suited. Okay, good. In general, the suited hand there is only going to have about 3 to 4% more equity on average. That means suited is not necessarily jüdet at all. What I have written here is meant differently. The thing that you guys should really understand is that the suitedness of the hand doesn't really increase your equity that much at all, as I just mentioned. But what it does do is give you kind of a rule to decrease your total VPIP. VPIP is voluntarily put money into the pot. It means the total number of hands you play, raise or limp, or just call, in any given position. So if you adhere to the suited rule, what's going to happen is that you're only going to be suited with that 10 Jack one time in 4 when you're dealt a 10 Jack, and you'll be off suited 3 times in 4 when you're dealt a 10 Jack. That means that you decrease your entire total hands played with that same rank by effectively 75% when you only play it suited. So I'm not saying play it suited because it's that much better. It's not. It's simply that you'll be playing fewer hands because you'll be pitching the off-suited hands of the same rank. That's kind of the idea. So if you're looking to decrease VPIP, this suited idea is a really good idea. For example, the ace-9 offsuit would be a pitch, not because it's the ace-9 suit is much better, simply that you'll have only played it from early position, one time in 4 rather than 3 times in 4. That's kind of the idea. Alright, so moving right along here, middle position again, all pairs for sure at that point, raising up. Again, 3 to 4 big blinds plus 1 per limper. And all Broadway, suited and off-suited. It means from the good. Middle position. All right, all Broadway, suited and off-suited. Ace-8 or better. Ace-5 suited, and that is a total range of 21.3%. Now we've got here the option to, of course, 3-bet. And what is a 3-bet? You guys remember that's a re-raise, and we can only 3-bet if the under-the-gun player, the player in EP, when we're in middle position, raises it up. And I would say in general, only 3-bet when you're just getting started. Okay, this is again a very general recommendation. You can change the hell out of all this, but as a general recommendation, if the under the gun player raises, he makes a 2-bet. I would say only 3-bet in general versus the EP raiser with jacks or better, ace king. Typical general recommendation for most starting players. Good. We're in the cutoff, right? So UTG plus 1, UTG plus 2. All pairs, all Broadway. Ace-5, all for better, any suited ace. King-9 suited or better. This 54 suited plus means all of your max stretch suited connectors. So max stretch means basically 5-4 to 10 Jack. So you can flop 4 ways. You can flop a straight 4 ways. So you can flop ace-2-3. You can flop 2-3-6. You can flop 3-6-7. You can flop 6-7-8. Same with 10 Jack. That's exactly how that plays. So that's called a max stretch suited connector. And we're also going to be raising the one gapper here, 10-8 suited or better, more or less, right? And once we get into live play, I mean the real-time sessions and stuff like that, you'll see that I'll vary the crazy hell out of this. It's a general recommendation, and yeah, we'll change it up from time to time. But especially the EP recommendations, I would say definitely adhere to. You can start getting creative already here and here. All right, 3-bets versus the open raise from middle position of the hijack. We're looking at 3-betting here with 10s or better, ace queen, and then some speculation. So the speculation would be then small and mid pockets, again this max stretch suited connector kind of stuff. Good. On the button, if it's folded around to us, we make an open raise with all pairs, all Broadway hands, all aces, suited or not suited, king-7 off, queen-8. Look at how wide this range is, right? It's really, really crazy. 54 suited or better, and all of your one gap max stretches suited. And that's a whole range of 41% opening from the button. That's really wide. You can tighten that up, especially given the storm. always take into consideration the amount of times that your opponents will fold in the small and the big blind, and that you will see if you're using Hold'em Manager stats. So yeah, that's the typical or general range for the open raises from the button. And we're looking at 3-betting here from a previous raiser, let's say in the cutoff, that 9s or better, ace-jack or king, queen suited. And then we're also going to be re-raising or 3-betting then with some speculation, also a lot of bluffs. Right, because as soon as they get to the cutoff, they're going to be raising a lot wider, as you guys see here. So you can re-raise a lot wider, of course. And you can also flat, right? You can cold call in position on the button, outplay and post flop. There's a lot of things at your disposal when you are in position. So let's say you're in the small blind or the big blind, and what I put here is basically see the button range and then adjust it to the villain style. In online poker terms, the villain is always your opponent, and the hero is always you. So yeah, see this range here, the button range, basically for open raises from the small blind, then adjust to the villain style, your opponent style, and blind battles basically in the big blind. And there's a big point here. What is a steal? All right, well, steal is simply an open raise from the cutoff or later. So it's folded around to the cutoff, he raises up. That doesn't matter if the player in the cutoff is holding aces or 2-7 and raises. Both of those bets are considered a steal. So the steal, contrary to popular belief, isn't just stealing with nonsense hands. It's positional play. So it means you can steal with aces, you can also steal with 2-7 offsuit. As long as you're open raising from the cutoff, the button, or the small blind, it's considered a steal. Also statistically seen. What's a squeeze? Well, squeeze, as we'll get into here in a couple hands, squeeze is then when somebody open raises, let's say from middle position, the button cold calls, and you're in the small blind, and you re-raise. You make a 3-bet, and that is squeezing the initial raiser. And versus a steal, you make a re-steal from the blinds when you make a 3-bet. And squeezing at 30% or better, some guys will squeeze almost any 2 versus late position raisers. This is really, really effective. Yeah, squeezing versus late, very loose raisers and loose callers is very profitable. It's an advanced play, and it's something we'll get into as we move forward. And I think you guys will probably need a couple of practical examples to really understand that. But just understand the squeeze play from the blinds versus late raisers and loose callers is very, very effective, sometimes with any 2 cards. Alright, so 4 and 5 betting is then, again, this re-raise and re-raise or whatever. Basically, raising a 3-bet is a 4-bet, raising a 4-bet is a 5-bet. And I put here in general, 9s are better, ace, queen are better for 5%, but it totally depends on your opponents and what they're playing. Alright, this next set of ranges comes from an article in the Hold'em Manager program itself, and it's for flatting. 6-max flatting, no limit, or cold calling. So if I say flat sometimes or calling cold, I mean exactly the same thing. It's just basically calling the action before you. Alright, so they've defined very tight for a cold calling range at 6.5%, basically 2s to 10s, queen jack suited or better, actually 54 suited or better all the way up. So basically max stretch suited connectors as an open flat, or 2s to 10s, right, for set mining. Now, the reason they say this is the cold calling range is, of course, if you have jacks or better, or, yeah, again, ace, queen, ace, king, stuff like that, they're expecting you to 3-bet, right? Not just to flat, but to 3-bet. So this would be a very tight, they've defined very tight here, 6.5% as a cold call range. And then you guys can just read through that at your own leisure here, maybe pause the video. No reason to go through that in detail. I think the ranges now are clear. Yeah, and I've got a little note here. Essentially, take your opponent's stats and playing style, as well as your and their table images, into account whenever you're making a decision. I want you guys to not just kind of react, but actively act. Alright, you want to have a plan for the entire course of the hand, all the way to the river, and actually you want to have a plan, your general approach to whatever level you're playing for any session that you begin. Alright, that means online and live. Last point, put pressure on your opponents, put the final and most difficult question to them, and have them adjust to your game, not the other way around. And with that, I think we'll jump into a couple of example hands to show you guys what basically a steal and a re-steal is and how that equates to certain bet types pre-flop. Alright, so here's another hand where we picked up a monster in the big blind. Kings this time, and our total stack size is just over $30. So that means we've increased our stack by about 53 big blinds, because you can only start with a maximum of 20, right, for 100 big blinds. So again, guys, small blind, big blind, early position, middle, cutoff, and the button, also referred to as under the gun plus 1, under the gun plus 2, under the gun plus 3, etc. Good, so action starts, we get a fold, we get another fold. This guy's getting pot odds for the open limp, right, or open raise of 1.5 to 1. He decides to min raise. Okay, again, min raises, guys, you typically want to avoid. Everybody can flat you with anything, more or less, if they're in position here especially, and outplay you post flop. And a lot of fish are going to min raise this with monsters. They're going to limp with monsters. You know, if you get a limp or a min raise, re-raise, you really got to watch out. So, I mean, against most novice rec players. Alright, so this guy min raises up, and the button flat calls. So this is a 2-bet, and this is a flat or a cold call on the button. So he cold calls in position. What does that do? Well, it sets up these two guys, when he flats, for one of us to then make a 3-bet squeeze. And this is what I was telling you about. He basically makes an open raise, and that's for all intents and purposes considered a steal move, a steal raise, because it's folded to him and he's in the cutoff. So he makes a steal raise as a min raise. Okay, he 2-bets. This guy flats or cold calls. Small blind folds, and we make this squeeze. Now, I'm going to make this squeeze bet with a very wide range of hands. If I know that this guy is raising light, that means with a wide range here from the cutoff, and this guy's also calling very wide with a very wide range here on the button. So that means when I raise this up, I'm basically squeezing this guy, right, between him and myself. So this guy doesn't know if this guy's going to re-raise after the fact, that hence the term squeezing, right? So I'm squeezing him here. And he then only calls. So he min bet, or basically min raise calls my 3-bet squeeze, and the player here on the button also flats or cold calls. Good. The flop comes and we flop, the absolute miracle. And again, holding any pocket pair, guys, you're going to flop sets, essentially one time, sets are better, one time in 8.5. So yeah, that includes, of course, kings and aces, and flopping sets are flopping sets. It's completely irrespective of the rank of the cards. So in this case, we flop top set, and it's impossible for somebody to have a better hand. So 10-Jack is drawing to an open-ended straight draw, and it is a so-called rainbow board. Okay, so it means 3 cards of different suits. Very good. I've got 2 players here behind me. I'm out of position on all post-flop streets. Okay, so we'll be talking a lot about that. Playing in position, hence on the button, right? Or out of position like we are. However, we have nothing to protect against on this flop. Right? We have the absolute nuts, and if somebody is on the 10-Jack, which could have been overcalled here, or a set of 8s, best case scenario, then yeah, you know, they may take the free card, who knows? But we check this, where we would normally in a squeeze situation typically bet, c-bet here on the flop, maybe 80-90% of all flops. We are against 2 opponents though, so I want somebody to take a shot for us. So I go ahead and open check that. And the player here who min raised, then flatted my 3-bet, makes, 2/3 pot size bet, more or less. Alright. This guy's getting 30%, basically 2.31 or 3.3 to 1 odds to make that call. And if he's going all in for the 390, again, I'm just going to repeat this a few times to kind of drill it in, he would need 30% equity to the river in order to break even in the long run. Alright, so he bets the 390, and I make a check raise. Alright, so I make that check raise at a size that won't scare him off necessarily. If I wanted to scare him off, I'd probably just shove, even though we're playing the effective stack here, right? So I'm so strong, I just check raise just enough to cover the remaining stack behind here. and he then does call us. So the check raise, got it all in on the flop. Very happy with that result. Turn comes, absolute rainbow board, and there's a river. Let's see what he had. So again, this is Dylan for MyBet.com, wishing you all the best, and definitely best of luck at your next storm table.